Hey everybody, this is Giancarlo Alino reporting for Sportskeeda MMA, and I'm happy to be joined by my guest today who's gearing up for her next regular season bout in the PFL. She is a reigning Bellator women's flyweight champion. She's Liz Carmouche. How you doing, Liz?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing great. And Liz, you're in this PFL global regular season. It's an exciting group of talented females on the roster there. How did this all come about? Because when Bellator acquired the PFL, or when PFL acquired Bellator, sorry, some of the champions are going to be competing at the Champion Series events, defending their titles. So, how did you get involved in this regular season?
Yeah, I think I've been pretty vocal about the opportunity to want to have multiple belts, right? And then with the buyout with PFL taking over Bellator, it was kind of a no-brainer for me to have the opportunity, one, to make $1 million, make more money than I've ever made in my career, but also have the opportunity to have a second belt. That's me. You couldn't turn it down.
Yeah, definitely. Don't blame you there. And you have this group right now of female fighters in this division, the regular season format where a finish could get you the maximum amount of points, the decision gets you a certain amount. So, does it add a lot more pressure going into your fight? And does it maybe change your game plan heading into it?
No, not at all. My game plan since I left the UFC was to finish every single fight and not wait, like no more decision wins, to try and every opportunity seek that finish, which is certainly what I tried to do in my last fight. Didn't happen. So this doesn't change anything for me. I still want to go out there and get the finish regardless. It's the third, second. I definitely would prefer it in the first round.
And also, you're in an interesting position here because your bouts were both rematches, and you prepared for Juliana Velasquez. It was the third time you fought. Was there anything that surprised you in that third matchup compared to when you fought in Bellator?
Yeah, she was a lot more evasive in this one, and of course that element of not having elbows certainly played when we were on the ground around the cage, where I felt like I would have been able to land some significant strikes that reduced the opportunity there. And then in really being able to try and finish, I think that she was expecting that if we went to the ground, I was going to chase getting those finishes. So she held me down, and then also just wouldn't allow for the submissions, which made it really difficult. And I was not anticipating that.
As you mentioned there, just the rematch. You also now are coming up with Kana Watanabe, who also had an impressive showing there. What's it like now? Like, does it change anything knowing that you're gonna be in another rematch and you have to prepare for this, knowing like what you said before about the elbow strikes?
Not against Kana. So like when I was facing Velasquez, I definitely felt in the first two bouts that elbows played a really significant role in those fights. Obviously, with the first, with me being able to finish it, but then in the second, just being able to have the threat there against the cage, any close proximity. But with both of the first fights, it wasn't like I got a first round finish with it, right? We had to go into the fourth round, go into the second round, so it was pushing it. With Kana, it was a quick finish. So I certainly can't just plan for it to be another 35-second finish, right? I have to watch the evolution that she's done with each of her fights and anticipate that she's going to be able to apply those techniques coming in and really adapt my whole game for a complete martial artist and not just a quick finish.
And we've heard just the PFL brass talk about this being the toughest tournament in sports, and you yourself now being a part of this and seeing this quick turnaround from one fight to the other. Are you coming around to that idea? Like, is this the toughest tournament you've been a part of?
I've only been a part of two tournaments. The first one's the Strike Force, and then this one. And no, just because I would say it's not the toughest, simply in the sense that I stay ready all year round. So I know for some of the women that like to go on limbo for like 6 or 9 months post fight and go party and eat and not train, that's never been my lifestyle. I mean, 6 a.m. after every single fight, I'm working out, I'm doing strength and conditioning, and I'm doing cardio, pad work if I can. So my goal has always been to stay ready and to stay fit and to evolve as much as possible. So PFL just helps play into that and keeping me goal oriented each time. The most difficult part is really just trying to game plan your advancement and understanding that just because you get a win doesn't guarantee that you're moving on, right? That's the hardest part, is you can come out of your fight like, yeah, I won the fight, I'm so happy, and you're like, crap, I'm last. That meant absolutely nothing, right? So that, I'd say, is the most difficult part, because you can't go into the mental celebration of you did so well if you didn't finish the person, you're not number one in the tournament. So I think that's the most difficult part that I feel like can really handicap people mentally and kind of handcuff their preparation each of the fights.
And how's that discipline helped you in your career? Because I'm sure like when you have these periods of you don't know who you're fighting next and like all these months that go on, sometimes you can be inactive. So how does that mental preparation, like where does you attribute that to? And just how has that helped you in your career?
I feel like it's helped a lot in my career. My first year fighting, I had 8 or 9 fights. And the reason I was able to do that is because I did stay disciplined. As I was back to the gym Monday morning, training as if I'd never had a fight and trying to just keep going forward. So I could accept last minute phone calls on 7 days notice, 11-day notice fights. And that really helped advance my career because I kept taking those phone calls. And then I've just applied that because that was how I started. And I thought that that's how you're supposed to train all year round. So I've applied that and kept that as a template for what I do for fighting. And I feel like that's really helped because I took opportunities that nobody else is willing to do. And that furthered my career when other people didn't. And then I've never seen them grow past when they did. And I just apply that now for PFL, and it's just helping even more than I feel like for other people.
And also, you're in a position here where you're training for fights happening so soon, quick turnaround. So, who have you been training most for this preparation for your fights?
So I've stuck with my 2 training camps. I trained at the arena in Point Loma in San Diego with Justin Flores for judo and wrestling. And then I usually head out to Virginia Beach and train at Atlas Wellness MMA with Coach Charles Martinez. And I feel like between Vince Salvador and Coach Martinez, Justin Flores, they really put together a cohesive game plan that is just fed into the success I've been able to achieve.
It's great. And also, right now in the PFL, they have a great division there competing in this tournament. Dakota Ditchova's in this. Talia Santos from the UFC comes in, and yourself, a champion. So, just a landscape of women's MMA under the PFL and Bellator banner. Does it bring more excitement to you that knowing after this tournament, you're going to have a lot more fights also lined up?
Yeah, it makes it really exciting. I feel like PFL Bellator has done a great job about building up the 125 division. And I'm really hoping with looking at what's going on with the climate of the 145 division in Bellator, that the conclusion of this season will hopefully open up a 135 division. So the women that compete in 145 and are not in the proper weight class, and the same thing for the 125 females, that we can fill up a 135 division. And then I have 3 different belts, and that would just be amazing for me.
Is that something you want to do? Go back to bantamweight? Because I know when you were in the UFC, you had some time there. So is that the goal after this tournament?
Yeah, there are so many lessons learned at 135 and then having gone down to 125 that I feel like I understand my body now more than ever. And I can apply that to being able to put on more muscle and move up a weight class. And I think it would just be a great opportunity to see different experiences because there are so many 145ers that when they fought in Bellator, they were way too big to go down to 125. So they moved up a weight class, but they're not in the proper weight class. And same thing, some 125 females that are struggling to make weight and either miss weight or are really just killing themselves to do it, they would be better in a 135 division. I feel like that would be a really easy transition, and it would kind of put the UFC and every other organization on notice to see that PFL is the best.
You mentioned there like your time at bantamweight. You were part of a historic fight there 11 years ago. You and Ronda Rousey, main event of the first UFC women's fight main event. And what do you remember most about that night? Because like I remember myself like being in high school at the time, watching and seeing how big of a deal it was for you being a part of it. Just what was your initial thoughts back then, and how has it changed maybe now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I take away from that event was just the energy that the whole stadium was filling. It was energetic. It was palpable. You actually feel like your hair standing up. And like, I'm not usually fed into the crowd one way or the other, whether they're booing me, whether they're encouraging. I kind of just focus on myself and letting me be my own motivator within there. But there was no denying the energy that was present in that venue that night. And that's the thing I'll always carry me is just to feel the excitement about the first ever inaugural fight in the UFC. And that's something I'll always carry with me.
And even like just as the sport has progressed, all the styles, all the females have come in from different backgrounds, and we even saw with Ronda Rousey too when she fought Holly Holm, just that atmosphere and the upset that was pulled that night. Just curious, have you seen her comments on just the loss? Like just watching it, did you see a difference? Because she brought up about concussions going into it. Like, did you notice anything different about her performance going against Holly Holm?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm not sure if it was just concussions that contributed. I mean, the demand that was placed on us for the media lead up to our first fight was a lot. And so for her to have to maintain and keep that, I'm sure over time definitely wore her down. And I think too, your first loss gets in your head. And if in your mind you had never in your game anticipated ever having a loss and had only ever put in your mind is just being on the top and that happens, and you don't mentally prepare for that, I don't think you have what it takes to be able to go back to the drawing board and to evolve past that. I think when she experienced her first loss, to go back in there a second loss, I just don't think that she was in the headspace to be able to do everything she needed to go out there and get that win. And then I'm sure if she had a concussion on top of that, she definitely was not in a good place for it.
And just like you yourself, you're part of uh eras in the sport where you've seen it evolve, and you've been a part of this where you've really become a champion during this evolution of the sport. I know when fans go back, it's kind of a topic where it's fun, like the Mount Rushmore of MMA. But for female MMA fighters, who would you put on the Mount Rushmore list?
I think Ronda is a no-brainer to me with being what she did achieve when she was UFC. I think it takes two to tango, and there's no way that I shouldn't go up there too with what I've achieved in the UFC, Bellator, and PFL. So I'm hoping myself as well. I think that Amanda Nunes is one that definitely has to be up there, and I think Holly Holm as well.
That's great. And just a couple final questions here to give our audience here at Sportskeeda MMA get to know you a little bit better going into this next fight. Some rapid fire questions. So, uh, who do you think, or who do you consider to be the best striker in MMA?
Ooh, I think with the exception of how it went down with Alexa Grasso, I think the Valentina Shevchenko is probably one of the best female strikers in MMA.
Who would you consider to be the best grappler?
Ooh, the best grappler. I think I'd like to put myself as the best grappler.
Who would you want beside you in case, something went down in a street fight? Who would you be calling upon and hope is there?
Vince Salvador, my striking coach. If I was going to go off anybody, I'd have him take my back in a street fight.
What's a favorite movie you have?
Ooh, favorite movie. A Boy Named A.
Favorite TV show?
Favorite TV show. Maybe How I Met Your Mother.
It's a good one. Do you have any other hobbies that you enjoy doing aside from fighting?
I am a hobbyist and that I pick so many different up from surfing, skydiving, guitar, trying to paint and do art, trying to write, you name it. I'm constantly trying new hobbies and trying to figure out new things to entertain myself.
Great. And final rapid fire question. What's the best piece of advice you've received in your career?
Probably the best piece of advice I received is to be the best version of me, is not to focus on the strengths and the weaknesses of the people around me, but to focus on improving myself and working on my own strengths and weaknesses.
Great advice there. And before we wrap up and let you go here, how can our viewers here at Sportskeeda MMA stay up to date with everything you're doing and follow you on social media?
Yeah, if they want to keep up to date, probably the best source right now is on Instagram, and it's Liz Carmouche or I am Gorilla. But I'm also on Facebook as Liz Carmouche Official and Twitter as I am Gorilla as well.
Highly recommend that follow. And Liz, I really appreciate you joining me and talk about your upcoming fight here on Sportskeeda MMA, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.